There comes a moment in every life when the noise of the world grows louder than the truth within you. When the opinions of others begin to weigh heavier than the voice placed inside your soul. And in that moment, you are faced with a choice that will shape the direction of your entire life. You can continue to shrink, to bend, to give pieces of yourself away just to keep others comfortable. Or you can rise, stand firm, and recognize that your life carries value that was never meant to be negotiated or diminished. You were not created to live exhausted by trying to meet every expectation placed upon you. You were not designed to carry the burden of everyone else's approval while neglecting the calling and peace within your own heart. There is a deep and unshakable truth that must take root inside you, and that truth is this: your worth is not determined by how much you give, how much you sacrifice, or how much you endure for others. Your worth is already established, already complete, and already enough. But the world will test that truth. It will push against you, demand more from you, and try to convince you that saying no is selfish, that choosing yourself is wrong, and that protecting your peace is a sign of weakness. Yet the reality is far greater and far stronger than that. Boundaries are not walls built out of fear. They are lines drawn with wisdom. They are the evidence of a life that understands its value and refuses to be diminished. When you begin to understand your worth, something powerful begins to change within you. You stop asking for permission to exist as you are. You stop explaining your decisions to those who do not respect your journey. You stop apologizing for protecting what was always meant to be guarded. And in that transformation, you discover a strength that cannot be shaken by opinions, pressure, or expectations. This is not about becoming hard or distant. This is about becoming whole. It is about recognizing that you cannot pour from an empty place, and that your peace is not a luxury, but a necessity. When you honor your worth, you begin to live with clarity, with courage, and with a quiet confidence that speaks louder than any words ever could. So today is not just another moment. It is an invitation. An invitation to rise above the fear of disappointing others and step into the truth of who you are. An invitation to stop negotiating your value and start living in alignment with it. And as you take that step, you will begin to see that boundaries are not what hold you back. They are what set you free. You walk into this world carrying something most people never take the time to recognize, something deeper than talent, louder than opinions, and stronger than circumstances. And that is your worth, not the kind that changes depending on who is looking at you, not the kind that rises and falls with approval or rejection, but the kind that is rooted in who you are when nobody is watching, and when nothing is being given back to you in return. And the problem is not that you do not have worth. The problem is that too many times in life you forget it. You trade it, you shrink it, just to fit into spaces that were never designed to hold your greatness. You start off strong, believing in yourself, knowing you deserve respect, knowing you deserve peace. But then life happens. People come with their expectations, their demands, their opinions, and slowly, without even realizing it, you begin to bend. You begin to say yes when your spirit is screaming no. You begin to tolerate things that go against your peace, just to avoid conflict, just to keep the connection, just to feel accepted. And that is where the erosion begins. Not all at once, but piece by piece, moment by moment, until one day you look up and you do not even recognize the version of yourself that has been trying so hard to keep everyone else comfortable. And here is the truth you need to face. Nobody is going to protect your peace for you. Nobody is going to step in and say enough on your behalf. If you do not understand your worth, the world will gladly decide it for you, and it will always be less than what you truly deserve. Because people will take what you allow. They will cross lines you never draw. They will expect what you continue to give without resistance. And it is not always because they are bad people. Sometimes it is simply because you never showed them where the boundary stands. Understanding your worth is not about arrogance. It is not about thinking you are better than anyone else. It is about recognizing that you are responsible for the life you live and the energy you allow into it. It is about knowing that your time has value. Your energy has value, your emotions have value, and not everybody deserves unlimited access to those things. Because every time you give your energy to something that drains you, you are taking it away from something that could build you. Boundaries come into your life as a form of self-respect and action. Not just something you think about, but something you live by, something you stand on. Even when it is uncomfortable, even when it costs you relationships, even when it makes you look different in the eyes of people who were used to the version of you that never said no. And that is where most people struggle. Not because they do not know they need boundaries, but because they are afraid of what will happen when they finally enforce them. You have to understand this clearly. When you start setting boundaries, you will see people differently. And they will see you differently too. Some will respect you more. Some will distance themselves. And some will try to challenge you to see if you are serious about this new standard you are setting. And that is the moment that defines everything. Because if you go back on your word, if you allow the same behavior you said you would not tolerate, then you teach people that your boundaries are optional, and your peace becomes negotiable again. But when you stand firm, when you stay consistent, when your actions match your words, something powerful begins to happen. You begin to feel a shift inside yourself. A strength that does not need validation, a confidence that does not depend on approval. Because you know that you are no longer abandoning yourself just to keep others. Air is close, and that kind of self-respect changes the way you walk, the way you speak, the way you show up in every area of your life. You stop over-explaining. You stop over-giving. You stop chasing after people who only show up when it is convenient for them. And you start choosing environments, relationships, and opportunities that align with who you are becoming, not who you used to be. And that is not easy. Because growth will always require you to let go of something familiar. But what you gain in return is something far more valuable: peace, clarity, and a sense of control over your own life. And do not get it twisted. Setting boundaries does not mean you will not feel guilty at times. Especially if you have spent years putting others before yourself, that feeling will try to creep in. It will tell you that you are being selfish, that you are doing too much, that you are going to lose people. But you have to learn how to sit with that discomfort and understand that growth does not always feel good in the moment. Sometimes it feels like loss before it feels like freedom. Because the reality is this: every time you say yes to something that disrespects your peace, you are saying no to yourself. And every time you say no to something that drains you, you are saying yes to your growth, your healing, your future. And that is a trade you have to be willing to make if you want to live a life that reflects your true worth. You are not here to be everything for everyone. You are here to be real, to be whole, to be aligned with what brings you strength and purpose. And that requires discipline. It requires awareness. It requires the courage to walk away from what no longer serves you, even when it is hard, even when it hurts. Because not everything that stays in your life is meant to grow with you. So you stand up, you take responsibility, and you draw the line, not out of anger, not out of pride, but out of respect for who you are and who you are becoming. And once you make that decision, you do not go back, you do not shrink, you do not apologize for choosing peace over chaos, because now you understand something you did not fully grasp before. Your worth was never up for negotiation, and your boundaries are the proof that you finally believe it. There is a quiet power in the word no, a strength that does not need to shout, a confidence that does not need permission. Yet for so many people, that simple word feels heavy, uncomfortable, almost forbidden. Because somewhere along the way, you were taught that saying no means you are difficult, selfish, unkind. And so you learned to say yes even when it cost you your peace, your time, your energy. And little by little, you began to lose control over your own life. You wake up and your day is already filled with obligations you never truly agreed to in your heart. Conversations you do not want to have, responsibilities that drain you, expectations that weigh you down, and it all traces back to one thing: the inability to stand firm in your decisions without feeling like you owe the world an explanation, an apology, or a piece of yourself just to keep things smooth. But here's the truth that changes everything. Every time you say yes to something that does not align with your values, your priorities, or your well-being, You are saying no to something that does. And the longer you continue that pattern, the further you drift away from the life you are meant to live. Not because you are incapable, but because you are unavailable. To yourself, learning to say no is not about rejection, it is about direction. It is about direction. It is about understanding that your time is limited, your energy is valuable, and your focus determines the quality of your life. And once you truly grasp that, you begin to see that not every NG deserves access to you. Not every request deserves your agreement, and not every opportunity deserves your attention. At first, it will feel unnatural. Your voice might hesitate, your mind might race with thoughts of how others will react. You might feel that familiar pull to soften your no with excuses, long explanations, or unnecessary apologies, but you have to recognize what that really is. It is the habit of putting others' comfort above your own truth. And if you keep feeding that habit, it will continue to control you. You do not need a long speech to justify your boundaries. You do not need to convince anyone that your decision is valid, because the moment you start over-explaining is the moment you start giving away your authority. And the more you do that, the more people will expect it from you. They will expect access, they will expect compliance, they will expect you to bend, because that is the version of you they have become comfortable with. But growth demands a different version of you, a version that understands that respect begins with self-respect. And self-respect is built through consistent action, not occasional courage. It is built every time you choose to honor your limits, every time you choose to protect your peace, every time you choose to stand in your truth, even when it feels uncomfortable. And let's be clear, saying no does not make you cold. It does not make you uncaring. It makes you aware, aware of what you can handle, aware of what you need, aware of what aligns with your purpose and what pulls you away from it, because you cannot give your best to the world if you are constantly running on empty trying to meet every demand placed in front of you. There will be moments when people do not understand your no, when they question it, when they push against it, when they try to make you feel guilty for choosing yourself, and that is why. Your strength is tested, not in the saying of the word, but in the standing behind it. Because a weak no invites negotiation, but a firm no establishes clarity. You have to be willing to sit with the discomfort that comes with disappointing others, because if you are not, you will spend your life disappointing yourself. And that is a cost that is far too high to pay. You will find yourself stuck in cycles that do not serve you, surrounded by expectations that do not reflect you, living a life that does not fulfill you. But when you learn to say no without apology, something begins to shift. You reclaim your time, you reclaim your energy, you reclaim your focus. And with that comes a new level of clarity about what truly matters in your life. You start making decisions that are intentional, not reactive. You start choosing paths that align with your growth, not just your comfort. And the people who truly respect you, the ones who value you for who you are, and not just what you can do for them, they will adjust, they will understand, they will honor your boundaries because they see the strength behind them. And those who do not, those who only valued your yes, will begin to fall away, not as a loss, but as a necessary shift in your environment, because not everyone is meant to go with you to the next level of your life. Some people are connected to the version of you that no longer exists, the version that overextended, overcommitted, and overcompensated. And as you grow, you have to be willing to let go of what no longer fits, even if it once felt familiar, even if it once felt comfortable. You are not here to be everything for everyone. You are here to be intentional, to be focused, to be aligned with your purpose. And that requires discipline. It requires courage. It requires the ability to stand firm in your decisions without seeking approval or validation from those around you. So when the moment comes and you feel that pressure to say yes, when your spirit is telling you no, pause, breathe, and remember who you are becoming. Remember what you are protecting. Remember that your life is shaped by the choices you make, not the ones you avoid. And in that moment, choose yourself, not out of selfishness, but out of awareness, not out of fear, but out of strength. Because every time you say no with confidence, without apology, without hesitation, You are reinforcing a truth that will carry you forward. A truth that says your time matters, your energy matters, your life matters, your life matters. And you are no longer willing to trade those things away just to keep the peace with others while losing it within yourself. You have been conditioned, trained in ways you didn't even realize, to believe that your value is tied to how available you are, how agreeable you can be, how often you can put yourself second, so someone else can feel first. And over time, that belief settles deep, shaping your decisions, shaping your relationships, shaping the way you show up in rooms where your voice should carry weight, but instead gets softened by hesitation. You feel it in those moments when something inside you says, "This is not right for me. This is too much. This is crossing a line." But your mouth still forms the word yes. And right after that yes, there is a quiet frustration, a heaviness, a question that lingers in your mind, asking, why did I agree to that when I knew it was not what I wanted? And the answer is not weakness. The answer is habit, a habit of choosing comfort over truth, approval over authenticity. And that habit will keep costing you until you decide to break it. Because saying no is not just a word, it is a decision. It is a declaration, and as a declaration, it is a line that separates who you used to be from who you are becoming, and most people never fully step into. That power because they are too busy trying to manage how others will feel about their choice, too focused on avoiding disappointment, conflict, or judgment, and in doing so, they end up betraying themselves over and over again. You have to understand something clearly. Every yes you give carries weight. It takes your time, your energy, your attention, your presence, and those are not unlimited resources. So when you give them away carelessly, when you hand them out just to avoid an uncomfortable moment, you are paying a price that shows up later as exhaustion, resentment, and a sense that your life is no longer fully yours. Learning to say no without apologizing starts with a shift in how you see yourself. Because if you still believe that your role is to keep everyone else comfortable, you will always feel guilty for choosing yourself. But when you begin to understand that your responsibility is not to manage the emotions of others, but to honor the truth within you, everything begins to change. Your decisions become clearer. Your voice becomes stronger. Your presence becomes more grounded. At first, it will feel unfamiliar, almost like you are doing something wrong, because you are stepping outside of a pattern that has been reinforced for years. You might feel the urge to explain yourself, to soften your response, to add extra words so your no does not sound too firm, too final, but you have to catch yourself in those moments and realize that over-explaining is not clarity. It is fear dressed up as politeness. It is an attempt to control how others perceive your boundary. And the truth is, you cannot control that. Some people will understand your no, some will respect it, and some will resist it, especially if they have benefited from your inability to say it in the past. But their reaction does not determine the validity of your decision. Your alignment does. Your ACE does. Your sense of self-respect does. There is strength in simplicity, in looking someone in the eye and saying, no, I can't commit to that. No, that does not work for me. No, I am choosing something different, and leaving it there without feeling the need to fill the silence with justification, because that silence is where your confidence lives. That silence is where your boundary stands without negotiation, and understand this. When you say no with clarity and consistency, you are teaching people how to treat you. You are showing them that your time is not open for unlimited access, that your energy is not available on demand, that your presence is something to be respected, not assumed, and that lesson will either elevate the way people engage with you, or it will push away those who were only comfortable when you had no limits. You might lose some connections along the way. And that can feel heavy, because letting go of what is familiar is never easy. But you have to ask yourself what you are really losing. Are you losing genuine respect? Or are you losing expectations that were never fair to begin with? Are you losing real connection? Or are you losing convenience that others relied on at your expense? Growth will always require you to make choices that your old self would have avoided. And this is one of them. Choosing to stand firm in your no even when it creates tension. Even when it shifts dynamics. even when it forces people to adjust to a version of you that they are not used to. Because that is how transformation works. It disrupts comfort, it challenges patterns, it demands a new standard. And as you continue to practice this, as you continue to choose yourself without apology, something powerful begins to settle within you. A calm confidence, a steady awareness that you are no longer reacting to every demand placed in front of you, but responding Windian, the intention with clarity, with control over your own life. You begin to notice that you have more time for what truly matters, more energy for the things that move you forward, more presence in the moments that deserve your full attention, because you are no longer spread thin trying to be everything for everyone. You are focused, aligned, grounded in your decisions. And the guilt that once felt so strong starts to fade. Not because you have become indifferent, but because you have become clear. Clear about your priorities, clear about your limits, clear about the kind of life you are building, and what does not fit into that vision. And with that clarity comes freedom. The freedom to live on your own terms, to make choices that reflect your truth, but to move through life with a sense of ownership that cannot be shaken by outside pressure. So when that moment comes again, when you feel the pull to say yes, just to keep things easy, pause and remember what is at stake. Remember the version of yourself you are committed to becoming. Remember that your voice matters, your choices matter, your boundaries matter, and then stand in that truth and let your no be enough without explanation, without apology, without hesitation. Because in that moment, you are not just declining a request. You are declaring that your life is your own, and you are finally living it that way. There comes a point in your life where you have to look at the people around you and ask a hard question, not who has been there the longest, not who knows you the best, but who truly respects you, who honors your time, your energy, your boundaries. And that question will open your eyes in ways you may not be ready for. Because not everyone who stands beside you is standing with you. Some are standing there because you have made it easy for them to stay without ever having to rise to your level. You give chances. You explain yourself. You try to be patient. You try to be understanding. You tell yourself they will change, that they just need time, that maybe you are expecting too much. But deep down, you know the truth. You feel it every time your boundaries are ignored, every time your words are dismissed, every time your peace is disrupted by the same patterns repeating themselves over and over again. And here is where your strength is tested. Not in how much you can tolerate, but in how much you are willing to walk away from, because letting go is not easy, especially when there is history, when there are memories, when there is a part of you that still hopes things could be different, but you have to understand something clearly. History does not equal respect. Time does not guarantee growth, and staying connected to someone who consistently disrespects your limits is a silent agreement to keep accepting less than you deserve. You have to stop confusing loyalty with self-sacrifice. Why? Because loyalty should never require you to lose yourself. It should never demand that you shrink, that you stay silent, that you keep tolerating behavior that goes against your peace just to keep the relationship intact. Real connection is built on mutual respect, on understanding, on the ability to recognize when a line has been drawn and choosing not to cross it. But when someone repeatedly crosses that line, when they hear your boundaries but choose to ignore them, when they apologize without change, when they promise without action, you have to take a step back and see the pattern for what it is. Not a mistake, not a misunderstanding, but a choice. And once you recognize that it is a choice, you have to make one of your own. Because every time you allow that behavior to continue, every time you stay and hope it will get better without any real evidence of change, you are teaching them that your boundaries are flexible, that your limits can be pushed, that your peace is negotiable, and that lesson will continue until you decide to change it. Letting go is not about anger. It is not about proving a point. It is about reclaiming your space, your energy, your self-respect. It is about understanding that not everyone deserves access to you just because they have had it in the past. And that realization can be painful because it forces you to accept that some people you cared about, some people you invested in, are not willing or able to meet you where you stand. You will feel the weight of that decision, the silence where there used to be conversation, the absence where there used to be presence. And in those moments, it is easy to question yourself, to wonder if you did the right thing, to feel the pull to go back to what is familiar, even if it was not healthy, because familiarity has a way of disguising itself as comfort. But you have to remind yourself why you made that choice. You have to remember the moments that led you there, the times you felt disrespected, the times your boundaries were ignored, the times you felt drained instead of supported. And you have to stand on that truth, even when it is difficult. Even when it is difficult. Because going back to what broke your peace will never restore it. And as time moves forward, something begins to shift. Slowly but surely, you start to feel lighter, clearer, more in control of your life, because you are no longer carrying the weight of someone else's behavior. You are no longer constantly adjusting yourself to avoid conflict. You are no longer sacrificing your well-being just to maintain a connection that was not built on respect. You begin to create space, and in that space, you start to grow. You start to reconnect with yourself, with your values, with the kind of life you want to live, with the kind of life you want to live. And as you grow, you will attract people who are ignite with that version of you. People who do not need to be reminded of your boundaries, people who respect them without question, people who understand that being in your life is not a right, it is a privilege. That is when you realize that letting go was not a loss. It was a necessary step forward, a decision that created room for something better, something healthier, something more aligned with who you are becoming, and that realization changes everything. Because it shows you that your peace is worth protecting, your boundaries are worth enforcing, and your life is worth living without constant compromise. So when you find yourself standing at that crossroads again, when you are faced with the decision to hold on or let go, do not let fear make that choice for you. Do not let history convince you to stay in something that no longer serves you. Stand in your truth, trust your growth, and have the courage to walk away from what disrespects your limits. Because the moment you do, you are not just leaving something behind. You are stepping into a life that finally reflects the respect you have for yourself. There comes a moment when you have to stop looking at people through the lens of who they used to be and start seeing them for who they consistently show themselves to be. Not in their words, not in their promises, but in their actions. In the way they respond when you draw a line, in the way they treat your boundaries when it no longer benefits them to respect you. And that moment will challenge you because it forces you to confront a truth you may have been avoiding. You want to believe in the good, you want to hold on to the memories, the connection, the history that makes it hard to walk away. But you cannot build a future on potential while your present is being disrespected. And that is where many people get stuck, holding on to what could be while ignoring weight. That is, hoping for change while tolerating patterns that never shift every time you set a boundary, and it gets ignored. Something inside you feels it, even if you try to brush it off, even if you tell yourself it is not that serious, because your spirit recognizes when it is not being honored, when it is not being protected, and the more you ignore that feeling, the more disconnected you become from yourself. The more you start questioning your own standards, lowering your own expectations just to keep the relationship alive. But understand this clearly. A relationship that requires you to lower your standards to maintain it is already costing you too much. It is already taking more than it is giving. More than it is giving. And no matter how much you try to fix it, adjust it, or carry it, you cannot make someone respect you if they have already decided not to. That realization is not easy to accept because it takes away the illusion that your effort alone can change things. It forces you to see that respect is not something you beg for. It is something that is either given or it is not. And when it is not, your responsibility is not to keep trying harder. It is to make a different choice. Letting go is that choice, and it is one of the hardest decisions you will ever make. Not because you do not know what needs to be done, but because of what it requires you to release, the attachment, the familiarity, the version of the relationship you hoped it could become. And letting go of that is not just about losing a person. It is about letting go of an expectation that kept you holding on longer than you should have. You will feel it, the weight of that decision, the silence that follows, the absence that leaves space you are not used to. And in those moments, your mind will try to pull you back. It will remind you of the good times. It will question your decision. It will make you wonder if you have up too soon. But you have to stay grounded in the truth, not the memories, not the emotions, but the reality of how you were being treated. Because going back to someone who consistently disrespected your limits is not love. It is a return to a pattern that will only repeat itself. And every time you go back, it becomes harder to leave again. It becomes easier to accept less, to settle into a version of life that does not reflect your worth. And you did not come this far to keep repeating the same cycle. You did not grow just to go back to what broke you. You did not learn your value just to keep negotiating it every time someone fails to see it. At some point, you have to draw the line and mean it. Not just in your words, but in your actions. Letting go is not about anger. It is not about proving a point. It is about alignment. It is about choosing a life that reflects your standards, your peace, your growth, even if it means walking away from people who once felt like a permanent part of your journey. Because not everyone is meant to grow with you. But some people are only meant to teach you what you will no longer tolerate. And when you finally make that decision, when you choose yourself fully, without hesitation, something begins to shift. Not immediately, not overnight, but gradually. You start to feel a sense of freedom you did not have before. A clarity that was clouded by constant compromise, a strength that comes from knowing you are no longer accepting what goes against your peace. You begin to rebuild. Not just your environment, but your relationship with yourself. You start trusting your instincts again, listening to your inner voice, honoring your boundaries, without second-guessing them, and that changes the way you move through the world, the way you connect with others, the way you connect with others, the way you show up in your own life. And as you continue to grow, you will attract different energy, people who respect your limits without you having to explain them, people who understand that your boundaries are not barriers but reflections of your self-respect. People who meet you with the same level of awareness and accountability that you bring to the table. That is when you realize that letting go was not a loss, it was a decision that created space for something better, something healthier, something that does not require you to constantly defend your peace or justify your boundaries. And that realization gives you a new perspective, a new standard, a new understanding of what you deserve. So when you are faced with that choice again, when someone shows you through their actions that they do not respect your limits, do not ignore it, do not minimize it, do not make excuses for it, see it for what it is and respond accordingly. Because your life is too valuable to be spent in spaces where your worth is not recognized, and your peace is too important to be sacrificed just to keep someone who refuses to honor it. And the moment you truly accept that is the moment you step into a level of strength that cannot be shaken by who stays and who walks away. Because now you understand that what matters most is not who you keep in your life, but how you choose to live it and who you choose to be within it. You spend a good part of your life trying to get it right for everyone else, adjusting your tone, your actions, your decisions, shaping yourself into what you believe people need you to be. And at first, it feels like the right thing to do. It feels like kindness, like responsibility, like strength. But over time, something begins to wear down inside you, a quiet exhaustion that builds every time you ignore your own needs, just to keep someone else satisfied. You tell yourself it is easier this way. Easier to go along, easier to avoid conflict, easier to ep the peace around you, but what you do not realize is that in trying to keep the peace with everyone else, you are slowly losing it within yourself, because peace is not something you create by constantly sacrificing your truth. It is something you protect by honoring it. There is a difference between being a good person and being a people pleaser, and that difference lies in intention and awareness. One comes from a place of genuine care. The other comes from a place of fear. Fear of rejection, fear of disappointment, fear of not being enough if you are not constantly giving, agreeing, and accommodating, and that fear will keep you trapped in a cycle where your worth feels tied to how much you can do for others. You feel it in those moments when you say yes, but your heart says no, when you agree to something that drains you, just to avoid an uncomfortable conversation, just to avoid an uncomfortable conversation. When you smile on the outside but feel the tension building on the inside. Because every time you ignore that inner voice, you create a gap between who you are and how you are living. And that gap becomes heavier the longer you carry it. Choosing inner peace is about closing that gap. It is about bringing your actions back into alignment with your truth, even when it is not convenient, even when it does not make everyone happy. Because the reality is this: no matter how hard you try, you will never be able to please everyone. And the moment you accept that is the moment you begin to free yourself from a pressure that was never meant to be yours. Not everyone will understand your choices. Not everyone will agree with your decisions, and some people will even be uncomfortable when you stop showing up the way they are used to. But that discomfort is not your responsibility to fix. Your responsibility is to stay true to yourself, to honor your limits, to protect your energy in a way that allows you to live. With clarity and strength. You have to stop measuring your value by how much approval you receive and start measuring it by how aligned you feel with your own life. Because approval is temporary. It shifts. It changes. It depends on expectations that are often unrealistic and constantly moving. But inner peace is steady. It is grounded. It comes from knowing that you are living in a way that respects who you are. And that requires courage. The kind of courage that does not always look loud or dramatic, but shows up in the quiet decisions you make every day. The decision to speak up when something does not feel right, the decision to step back when something is draining you, the decision to say no without trying to soften it just to make it more acceptable to others. There will be moments when you feel the pull to go back to old patterns, to overextend, to overexpend, to put yourself last just to keep things smooth. And in those moments, you have to remind yourself why you started this journey, why you chose to value your peace, why you decided that your life would no longer be controlled by the need to be liked by everyone around you. Because the truth is, the more you try to please everyone, the more you lose sight of what truly matters to you. Your goals, your values, your sense of direction, all of it becomes clouded by the constant effort to meet expectations that were never aligned with your path. And before you know it, you are living a life that looks acceptable on the outside, but feels empty on the inside. But when you begin to choose inner peace, everything starts to shift. Your decisions become clearer, your energy becomes more focused. Your relationships become more authentic, because you are no longer showing up as a version of yourself that is shaped by others. You are showing up as who you truly are. And that authenticity will attract the right people. The ones who respect your boundaries, who value your honesty, who do not require you to shrink or compromise your peace just to be accepted. And at the same time, it will create distance from those who are only comfortable when you are constantly accommodating their needs. And that is not a loss. That is alignment. You begin to realize that peace is not something you find, it is something you choose. Over and over again, in the way you think, in the way you respond, in the way you prioritize your time and energy. And every time you choose it, you are reinforcing a standard that shapes the quality of your life. So when you feel that pressure to say yes, just to keep someone happy, pause for a moment and ask yourself what it is costing you. What you are giving up in exchange for that temporary approval, and whether it aligns with the life you are trying to build, because every choice you make is either moving you closer to peace or further away from it. And once you become aware of that, once you start making decisions from a place of clarity instead of fear, you begin to move differently, with confidence, with intention, with a quiet strength that does not need validation, because you know that you are no longer living for the approval of others. You are living in alignment with yourself, and that is where true peace begins to take root and grow into something unshakable that no opinion, no expectation, and no external pressure can take away from you. There is a weight that comes with making decisions in life, a weight that sits heavy on your chest when you know what is right for you, but feel the pull of other people's expectations. And too often, you let that weight push you into hesitation, compromise, and apology, trying to soften your choices so others will not feel uncomfortable. And in doing so, you weaken the very power that your decisions were meant to give you. Standing firm in your decisions is not about stubbornness. It is not about pride. It is not about closing yourself off to the world. It is about understanding that your life is shaped by your choices, not by the comfort of those around you, and that every time you allow guilt to dictate your actions, you are surrendering control over the one thing that truly belongs to you. Your path, your purpose, your time. You will encounter people who question you, who challenge you, who try to convince you that you should act differently. And it can feel heavy because there is a natural desire to be liked, to be accepted, to be seen as reasonable, and yet every yes that comes from guilt is a yes that takes you away from your own alignment. And every no that is softened by explanation is a no that loses its strength. The challenge is learning to separate responsibility from guilt. To recognize that feeling responsible for the lives and emotions of others is not the same as being accountable to your own standards. And that accountability begins with clarity. Clarity about what you stand for. Clarity about what you will tolerate. Clarity about the direction you are moving in life. Standing firm requires courage, the kind of courage that does not make noise, that does not seek approval, that quietly aligns your actions with your truth. And that courage grows with practice, with each decision you make without over-explaining, without justifying, without shrinking to make someone else feel comfortable. Because the more you practice standing firm, the easier it becomes, the more natural it feels, and the more your own confidence anchors you, guilt will try to sneak in. It will whisper that you are being selfish, that you are being unreasonable, that you are harming relationships by insisting on your boundaries. And in those moments, you have to remind yourself that standing firm is not raw M. It is protection of your integrity, your peace, and your ability to show up fully in every area of your life without resentment or compromise. Every decision you make has a ripple effect, and you cannot control how others react to it. But you can control how aligned it is with your principles. And when you act in alignment, even if others are momentarily uncomfortable, you are planting the seeds of respect, consistency, and trust, first within yourself and then in the way the world interacts with you. It is easy to mistake firmness for rigidity, to think that standing your ground means you are inflexible. But true firmness comes from clarity, from understanding what is negotiable and what is not, from knowing where your peace begins and ends. And when you operate from that place, your decisions are no longer vulnerable to guilt, because they are rooted in something deeper than external approval. You will make mistakes, you will misjudge, you will sometimes find that your decision was not perfect. And that is part of standing firm. It is part of growing, but the difference is that you do not let the fear of imperfection prevent you from making choices, and you do not let the potential for disapproval stop you from honoring what matters to you. Because life rewards alignment far more than it rewards compliance. Your energy will shift when you commit to this way of living. Your relationships will shift, and even your own perception of yourself will transform. Because there is a profound sense of freedom in knowing that you no longer live under the weight of guilt for making choices that are right for you, and that freedom allows you to move through life with clarity, strength, and quiet authority. Standing firm is also about consistency, about showing up the same way every time a choice must be made, about demonstrating through action that your boundaries are not negotiable and that your peace is not optional. And that consistency teaches others how to interact with you. It creates a standard that commands respect without needing to demand it, and it protects you from repeated compromise. It requires self-awareness, the ability to notice when guilt is creeping in and to recognize it for what it is. A challenge to your alignment, a test of your commitment to yourself, and with that awareness, you can pause, breathe, and reaffirm your decision without wavering, without apology, and without the need for validation from anyone else. The more you practice standing firm, the more you will see the difference it makes in your life. The more your confidence will grow, the more your inner peace will solidify, and the more those around you will learn to respect the boundaries you set. Because respect always follows integrity, and integrity is built one deliberate, courageous, and guilt-free choice at a time. So when you are faced with decisions that matter, when the pressure to yield is strong, when the voices of doubt and guilt rise within you, remember that your power lies not in seeking approval, but in honoring your truth. That your freedom comes from the ability to act in alignment, without apology, and that every time you stand firm in your decisions without feeling guilty, you are stepping into a life of clarity, strength, and unshakable confidence that cannot be taken from you. And as you carry this practice forward, you begin to understand that your life is not measured by how many people approve of you or how often you bend to fit someone else's expectations, but by the integrity with which you live each day, by the courage it takes to honor your own truth, and by the clarity that comes when your choices align with your values. Every time you make a decision without apology, you reinforce the understanding that your peace is non-negotiable, that your boundaries are real, and that your life is yours to direct. You start to notice the subtle changes in yourself, the confidence in your voice, the steadiness in your steps, the calm in your mind, because living without guilt does not make life easier, but it makes you stronger. People may resist, some may leave, and some may test you, but those experiences no longer shake you because you have learned the unshakable principle. Your worth and your integrity are not contingent on anyone else's comfort. And in that space, you discover freedom, a freedom that allows you to live fully, love deeply, and pursue your purpose without hesitation, without compromise, without guilt. Standing firm becomes your quiet power, a reflection of a life lived intentionally, courageously, and aligned with who you were always meant to be.